have you seen that 4-minute clip from the New York Comic-Con about Picard season 3?
No.
Oh my God. All of it is just about how grateful they are to the Next Generation fans and how they are very excited for the Next Generation fans to see this season and see where the characters have been. And I'm like, oh, fuck, it's just Next Generation season 8. Like, it's not Picard season 3.
Well, isn't that a good thing?
Well, kind of, but there are so many like cliffhanging threads that they had in season 2. You know, like, yes, I want to see all these characters and I would love for them to be all together again. And I'm excited to see how that goes as a Next Generation fan. But as a Picard fan, as somebody who was invested, you know, however small in those stories, I'm frustrated that they're using this platform to tell these other stories.
See, this is what we've been wanting, though. I can't believe you're saying this. This is mutiny because we pretty much just bitched the whole time about Picard season 2.
Yeah.
And yes, there were technically dangling threads in season 2. But if someone said you get another season of Next Gen, assuming that it's still good, or, oh, we'll go ahead and continue this shitty show that we've been doing for 2 seasons that somehow is still on the air, but nobody seems to like.
Right. I'm going to take Next Generation hands down. But then I would say, like, call it Next Generation Revival, you know, or like acknowledge that it is Next Generation and don't just say it's the next season of Picard. You know, and if you're going to do the next season of Picard, like, I want that first episode to be jam-packed with resolutions to everything from season 2 and then move into Next Generation.
I mean, I think you're going to get your resolutions. I don't think they're going to be satisfactory.
No, I don't think so either. Like, I think they will just casually mention that the Borg is handling that other threat that's millions of light years away. And,
yeah,
you know, and it's not anything that they need to worry about anymore. And Eleanor's doing fine in Starfleet.
Does anybody really, is that answering a question nobody asked?
Kind of.
How's Eleanor doing?
Yeah.
What's Eleanor been up to? He was barely in season 2.
Well, right, but he died in season 2, and then he was resurrected at the very end.
I know.
You know, and so, like, yeah, so there's going to be just this quick offhand comment about how he's doing fine. You know, we're never going to see him. Like, he'll be Maris from Frasier, if you know that reference.
Well, what they should do is put together, who was the android from season 1? Suri?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Siri?
Sorry. That should be the character
Sorry.
name. Like, sorry we made this.
I'm sorry. It's okay.
Yeah. She and Eleanor should just get together and leave and just want to go explore the galaxy and get rid of them.
There you go.
They basically did that with Sari in season 2.
Right.
And they brought her back because everybody looks like each other in the past.
Oh my gosh. Yep. And it's this person. Yeah, I have no words.
Yeah, that's what it's going to be. But I would much rather have season 8 if it's going to work.
Yes.
But we talked about this already.
Right.
But maybe it'll happen. Yay! Season 8.
We are definitely getting season 8. I mean, you need to go watch that clip. It is like 100%. Is
it just going to make me mad, though?
No, I think it will make you excited because you don't care about Picard.
I don't know. Enough about Picard.
But it wasn't like Baywatch Nights, you know, where season 2 suddenly went into like supernatural stuff.
Baywatch Nights. So on my list, I have to watch Frasier and Baywatch Nights.
You really just need to watch like the last 3 episodes of season 1 and then the first 3 episodes of season 2. You don't need to watch the whole series.
That's a lot.
I know. That is a tall ask. I know.
Okay, well, should we do this?
Yeah.
As we know. As you know. As you know. And you. And you. I don't know where I was going with that. I thought maybe I'd do the Oprah thing. That's so fucked out that I don't want to do it.
That's so what? What did you say?
It's like the Oprah thing.
Yeah, but what did you say?
You get a car.
It's so what?
So fucked out.
Fucked out?
Yeah, like overdone.
Yeah, I've just never heard that phrase.
Well, you learn something new every day.
Right? I mean, it's great. Yeah. That is a great way.
You can use it with your school.
Yeah, totally.
As you know, but we said that already, this is The Measure of an Episode, where it is our continuing mission to explore what makes Star Trek genuine Star Trek, and not just a jaunt through the original series movies. I'm Paul.
And I'm Jonathan, and we do this using 3 criteria. The first one is there sci-fi that is actually required in the plot? Number 2, is that sci-fi unique, novel, and actually explored and not just presented? And 3, is there a moral or ethical dilemma that a character must face? I'm Jonathan.
And I'm Paul. And this week we watched 2 episodes. Not 1, not 3, but 2.
I watched 3.
Lower Decks Crisis Point, parts 1 and 2. And I don't even know if people care about us reading the blurbs. We're going to do it anyway. Do people care? I don't know. I think it helps for people who haven't seen the episode.
Exactly. Yeah, they at least have some idea of what we're going to be discussing and not just listening in on a eavesdropping.
It's just another element that they don't care about in our podcast. The blurb for part 1 is Mariner searches for catharsis through a holodeck program where she tries to murder her mother.
Is that really what it says?
No, but I didn't write it down. I couldn't get to it on Paramount Plus. Like, it wouldn't let me get to that part where it shows you the blurb. So I thought I'd write something down. Part 2, Boimler's holodeck movie sequel tries to live up to the original.
Nice.
Yeah. That's actually what is written.
Right.
That's real.
Okay.
That's real. Yeah. I thought these were really fun. I thought that they were really well done visually because they're this weird amalgam of the original series movies, especially the music. The music is straight on James Horner, Wrath of Khan. I think he did Star Trek 3 too. And it just has that feel. So bravo.
Right.
But also like this J.J. Abrams look to them where they have that kind of, you know, the camera's kind of tilted and off center a little bit, and the lighting, you know, of course there were lens flares and things like that.
Oh my
but they
God.
all have kind
everywhere.
of this, yeah, they all kind of have this backlit key lighting on each character, where the outline of them is kind of lit up as though it's very cinematic. I don't know why the whole show doesn't look like this.
Right.
It's so cool looking. I mean, I guess it would betray kind of the tone of the show, but looks really cool. There's even a moment they kind of reference themselves that they're going in and out of a movie. So I don't know if you noticed this, but when they go into the holodeck and it becomes the movie Crisis Point, the mat on the upper and lower side kind of crunches down, and it makes it look a lot more like a movie. They sometimes will call it anamorphic.
No, actually, I didn't notice that at all. Okay.
So the block, so it crunches down for the movie. And so when Mariner leaves, she steps over that mat to go into the regular sized frame.
That's hilarious.
Of the show.
Right.
Yeah. I thought that was really fun. At first I was like, is that like a weird animation thing they just didn't fill in? I was like, oh, no, it's the mat.
Right.
It was very clever.
That's really funny.
Yeah. That was cool.
Yeah. How meta, though.
I know. Well, I think that they were obviously making fun of Star Trek in a way. Not making fun of it, but sort of making fun of the movie ideas or the movies themselves, because they kind of hit all of the original series movies.
Okay. What are you thinking? Like, how so?
I can't give you specific examples, but they, you know, for the first one, like there's this part where, so the Kitty Hawk.
Yeah.
That is a reference to Star Trek 1.
Okay. Right, V'ger, right.
Yeah, and I think part 2, The Wrath of Khan, I don't know if there was a specific reference. I'm sure there was. I just don't remember it offhand. Number 3, I think, is when does somebody get resurrected? That's when Spock
at the very
gets
end, yeah.
resurrected.
The teaser, how, you know, they're like, sometimes it's nice to just have a happy ending with no cliffhangers.
I know. I hate cliffhangers.
Well,
Cut to cliffhanger.
I wish that they had just left it. Like that, I think that would have been a much better joke. If they just said, I hate cliffhangers.
Well, I'm glad to hear that William Boimler is not dead, though.
Yeah? Were you worried about that?
I kind of was. I didn't even know he existed, but they did a good job making me care about him.
Right? You're like, who's this guy? I don't even... Oh, good, he's not dead. Oh. Spoiler, by the way. Like, I know that we don't usually mention that in the podcast anymore, but yeah, that's definitely a big old spoiler for the entire episode.
But anyway, yeah, they kind of go, I'm sure, and you know, part voyage home, no voyage home, they
travel through time.
Go back in time.
Yep.
Yeah, they travel through time and they get it wasn't a whale, it was an octopus.
Right.
But they hit all the beats. I'm sure if we went through and dissected it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. All right, that's fair. That's fair. It's funny because like you watch it with that little panic mode of like, what Easter eggs am I missing? And I go into it and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna watch this episode.
And you don't watch it.
That'll only happen once. We'll let the listeners try and guess which one it was. By the way, I've never heard this line before, and I don't know if it's been used anywhere, but like it was amazing with Shax, like putting his hands up, and he's like, no, we don't want any, and then just beats him down and says witnesses.
Yeah, it's sort of getting more clever. I don't know if I'm just catching more of the jokes. Now that I'm watching it, I'm kind of settling in, and I'm learning not to just search every pixel of every frame for a reference of some kind. I'm just kind of settling into the comedy, but it's actually a pretty funny show.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's interesting watching an episode from the first season and then an episode back to back with an episode from the third season.
Yes.
Because you could see how the writing has grown a little bit
Uh-huh.
and how there seems to be more fodder for all the different characters. Because if you think about what we talked about Mariner, how she's kind of one-dimensional in terms of how they write stuff for her, it's super prevalent in the first episode,
Right.
The first season episode, because it's exactly what happens to her every other episode, right?
Yeah.
She's pissed off, something happens, she's pissed off at her mom or the ship or her...
She's pissed off at X. Yeah.
Her assignment, yeah. She overreacts, does something rash, and then finds a way to find peace with it.
Right. Has that
gets some
catharsis moment. Yeah.
Yeah. And then she's okay again and she's happy.
Right.
Repeat.
for a week. Yeah.
Kind of thing. Yeah. But in this one, Mariner doesn't get mad.
No.
Really.
Yeah.
Boimler actually has an existential crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Tendi is kind of expressing herself as captain. We kind of learn a lot about the characters. And once again, this also proves our theory that Lower Decks is not a plot show at all.
Right.
It's a plot sort of peripherally.
Uh-huh.
It's just sort of the setting. Whereas it's more about the characters and how they grow by the end of the episode. And so, but it was just it's a much more, I don't know, widespread. Like they threw a much wider net in terms of what to make the episode about. It was about 3 characters, not just about one.
Right. Well, who's the third?
Well, Tendi, Boimler, and I was going to say Mariner, but she doesn't really do anything.
Right.
I mean, she's
Okay.
in the show the whole time.
Yeah.
But she doesn't. I guess nothing really happens with her.
Well, right, but it was also a nice character growth for her just in general that she was going along with what Boimler wanted to do, even though she was kind of complaining and irritated. Sorry, even though she was kind of complaining and irritated about it the whole time, she still went with him because they're friends.
Right. Yeah.
And I feel like
For once, she was being supportive of her friends rather than the other way around.
exactly, yeah. And I feel like season 1 she would have been like, "This is stupid, I'm out," much earlier. Whereas this time around, it was more she thought it was stupid because she didn't understand where this was coming from, and not just because she wanted to go do the fun stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's refreshing. I mean, it was a well-written episode. I think it was funny. It was very referenceful, I'm sure.
Right.
It was anxiety-ridden the whole time. I couldn't get all of them. And I also am definitely not getting all of the original Trek movie trivia. I mean, I've seen them all, but not enough to really understand all of the like I don't know them
Mm-hmm.
like I know all of the next gen movies.
Right. That's fair.
Do you know them? I just don't have I'm not a nerd for them,
Right. Yeah. And my knowledge of them is plot points, and like for our podcast, I will do the research for them, but I cannot tell you beat for beat. The thing that I can tell you is like in that first episode, where Mariner, like it starts with her saving that planet. She's riding the Jeep that came from Insurrection, I think, like where they were doing the off-roading.
Right. Off-roading in Star Trek. It's exactly what you need.
Well, yeah, like those two go the best together. Like what else are you going to do?
When you have technology that literally floats and hovers, you need an off-roading, an ATV. But it's funny because I think again, I'm saying this every episode, but I think this might be my favorite Lower Decks episode because it was so cinematic. It just looked so good.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess one of the things that always takes me out of animation is it's just flat lighting. Aside from a few exceptions where they're trying to be funny for a specific reason visually,
Right.
it's always just flat lighting. You never, except for the exteriors where they're showing the 3D versions of the ship.
Sure.
But even the 3D stuff, I've kind of bitched and moaned before about how the 3D stuff looks very rudimentary on this show.
Mhm.
But this was, I mean, they made it look really good.
Yeah.
And I just wish the show was like this.
Right. I do. I actually went back and timed it, and I love that scene in the first season episode where they show the upgrades to the Cerritos, and it's a minute. It's a minute of just starship porn of like them like circling around the ship.
Yeah. That is a reference to the first movie.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that they leaned into it. Like it wasn't just that it was a full minute of them just reacting to the ship.
Yeah, and it was
so
kind of
good.
nice. I liked it. And the music got to shine.
The thing that I like about your liking the episodes is they don't keep getting better with one thing. Like last week's episode was your favorite because of how funny it was. This week is your favorite because of how cinematic it is.
It seems like they're getting better at the show.
Right.
That's based on nothing because I haven't seen seasons 1 or 2. But if you think about the first episode, I don't know. It just doesn't. It seems like I'm able to soak more of it in. I don't know if you're having. I mean, you're not because you're tired of watching it. It's like we're inversely correlated to each other.
Right. Yeah. The more invested you get.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm starting to like. I mean, it could be that the next episode is just back to normal. I doubt it. It seems like they're building up to the. I mean, there's only 10 episodes.
I think so. Yeah.
Right. So they're definitely building to some sort of grand finale. They must be.
That's my thought. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, with all the seeds that they've planted throughout this season of, just those little tags at the end or the little cliffhangers, I suspect that the season finale is going to be just insane.
I'm trying to piece together all of the different cliffhanging.
I know the only
things.
one I can think of is the one from the last episode with Peanut Hamper, but I think that there was also one with Jennifer. No. There was the one with the where they turn him into stone, and there was that whole huge plot point about the Starfleet technology being traded, and they're just like, we found that secret. That's not the word I'm looking for, but
hidden thing that they don't want people to know about.
Right. I mean, we found this plot device, but we're not going to do anything else with it.
Well, they have that. They have the Rutherford thing. They have this most recent one with Boimler. By the way, does William Boimler leave on the Defiant?
I know. I mean, it's definitely
is that ship a Defiant?
Is it called a Defiant class? I think it is because of the Defiant. It's definitely a Defiant class. I don't know if it is the actual. We don't know if it's the actual Defiant. I don't.
Oh, I always thought that was just the name of it.
Well, right. It was the only one of its kind, and then they started building others. And I think I'm not positive, but I think the Defiant got blown up.
I don't remember.
Yeah. I don't think we've seen that episode.
It almost did in First Contact, but it was salvageable.
Right.
That's all I remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was interesting. That kind of indicates Borg a little bit. I don't know how much they've explored the Borg in this show.
Right.
But it could, because the Defiants were made to defeat the Borg.
Oh, gotcha. Well, we saw the Borg in the Wage Douche episode.
And that was about a Vulcan
crew
member.
Yeah, it was a Vulcan lower deck, a Klingon lower deck, and then the Starfleet lower deck. And that's another interesting point because the Vulcan in that episode was talking about how she was going to go join Starfleet, and we haven't seen her since.
Right. They tend to do that on the show, I guess.
Right. But it's kind of nice, like I know that season 3 of Next Generation did that, where they brought back a lot of plot lines from seasons 1 and 2. But it's nice when it's just in the background, that they can draw back on anytime they want, rather than having it be like the next episode is a follow up to that.
Right. Well, I hope that it is a grand finale. It'd be fun to see the Borg doing something.
Yeah. Besides the opening credits, you mean?
Yeah. Because it doesn't seem like they have really explored any kind of conflict
Right.
Or that there should be an ongoing conflict right now with the Borg.
Why?
Just because in the timeline of Star Trek, it seems like that we're neck deep.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Gotcha.
But we did learn some things. We learned that Boimler is not a vintner.
No, I know.
Which was great. He grows grapes for raisins.
I know, he's a raisin farmer.
That was a nice touch. Do we know who Leanne is? He says he should have married Leanne.
I know, I'm just one of the gals who was throwing herself all over him.
Is that, I mean, I'd love to know if that's foreshadowing something or if that is a reference to something we do not know. Or just something to throw out there to annoy people like me.
Right. You're like, is that an Easter egg? What is that referencing?
Yeah, I know. And they have such power over us with that shit. Right?
Oh, totally. Yeah, like they
can just throw something in and be like, what are you talking about? It doesn't mean anything. You wasted your energy and time on that.
Well, yeah. Just put in some throwaway line. This is just like that time, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And
yeah.
people will scour the close to 1,000 episodes.
People must have the scripts that they can search, because there's no way all these internet dweebs out there, or internet dweebs, Star Trek dweebs out there can just offhand reference something, or that they're going back and watching stuff. It's like, well, that sounds familiar. Got to do a rewatch, roll it up the DVD. You know, like that's not happening. So they must have scripts that they can pour over.
Yes, but at the same time, there are some visual things that wouldn't be in the script.
That's a good point. So I guess they are going back and rewatching after every episode.
Right? Or I mean, there's got to be some kind of database where it's like this episode also has this alien race has these items, like some kind of visual database where they can pull up the alien race. Or they need some kind of like tablet or tower or cup, and it'll pull up all the different cups of the different alien races, and then they've got that as a reference point, and they can decide which one to do.
Yeah, I mean, that goes beyond my love of Star Trek. It's kind of like I'm a completist. I don't like to just sort of sit in midway through the season and start watching. I don't like to click through television and just find a movie that's 3/4 of the way through and just sit there and watch the end of it. I will not do that.
Right.
I cannot do that.
Even if it's a movie you've seen?
Yeah, I just don't like. If I'm going to watch it, I'm going to watch it from the beginning to the end, especially because I tend to like the beginnings of movies more than I like the ends of movies.
Gotcha.
I don't know why that is, but
probably because the ending has to be satisfying, and it's really hard to do. But the beginning can set up all of the problems.
Yeah, but even if I've seen the movie before, I tend to just like the experience of the first half of movies and the second half of movies.
Okay.
I think it's because a lot of times, well, I guess most times in movies, the end is an escalation.
Right.
And in a lot of movies these days, it's like a lot of battles and fights and action sequences, or just running and chasing. And it's just, to me, that those are not as interesting to me. I have very little to talk about with these episodes. I mean, because they're so good.
Right.
So we should talk about something. And it's just slower paced.
Mm-hmm.
And I tend to like that more than hurry up and let's get to the end of the movie type of stuff.
Right.
There was a thing where it said the third moon of Shatanari, which is sort of a portmanteau of Shatner and Shakari, which in the 5th Star Trek movie is where they go to find God.
Oh.
And that's where Boimler goes to find his God.
Right.
Star Trek movie.
Okay.
I think that's what they're doing. That's what it seems like they're doing, right?
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. I was actually disappointed that it wasn't Shatner, but I love that it was George Takei.
I wonder if they asked Shatner, he didn't want to do it.
I have to believe that that's what happened, because he always talks about like how he's so willing to do these things, but he always turns it down. And
I wonder if he turns it down because he doesn't want to be a cartoon character, or if he thought that the material was below him. I would love to know. I mean, it was no longer, including all the setup and pleasantries with all the people working at the studio, an hour tops, right, of his day. And they probably would have sent a car for him. Like, he had to expend no energy
right
to do it. So why not do it?
Yeah. Well, and it could also have been that they were like, he was like, I'm not doing it unless I sign off on how I look as a cartoon character.
Well, it's not like they're doing South Park versions of. It would have been a nice version of him, I'm assuming.
Right. But yeah, like
Sulu looked fine.
yeah.
How do we get on that? Where do we go? Oh,
I
you
was-
want to find something. Oh, okay, right.
Oh yeah. So the other thing too that I was kind of irritated by. Well, first off, I get that it's cartoon and the characters are slightly exaggerated, but I would not want to be on the holodeck with Rutherford. If he gives that little of a shit about the story that's happening, it's like, dude, don't come in then. Like,
Yeah, I agree. So this is a really good. This whole holodeck idea of you've written a movie and then you play the movie. It's kind of a good concept of what we would do in terms of what entertainment would be like in the whatever century, like 600, 500 years from now, that you wouldn't passively be watching it.
right.
It would be something that you were interacting with everything. I mean, I don't know if it will be a room that you walk into. It probably will be something where you put on a USB port in your brain type of thing.
Uh-huh.
We've talked about that before. But I'm curious if you think that or I guess I should ask, I may have asked you this before. I don't know, but we're going to ask you again for all of our new listeners.
Okay.
Would you rather play act like they do in this episode, where you're an integral part of the mission, like you are not just watching, you're not just a bystander, or would you rather just watch a movie?
It would totally depend on the day. You know, I think that most of the time I would want to be actively a part of it, but not necessarily the main character, because then I actually do get to like kind of follow along in the action rather than leading it. But if it's a full on, holodeck movie, then it's almost like a choose your own adventure type thing where you get to just wander around and find other parts of this story and see what's happening. You know, like what is the bad guy doing while they're waiting for us to show up?
It's kind of like an escape room.
Yeah.
But that takes a lot of energy. That's not relaxing.
Right.
You don't go to an escape room to relax. So I guess there would still be both, because you want to sit back and watch a nice story or 10 stories and then make a podcast about it. Like you don't want to you want to be able to turn off your brain. And I don't think you could do that in a movie. Like they're working, they're expending themselves. So I guess it would be both. I was wondering like if the idea of a traditional conventional movie would go away, but it probably wouldn't.
Well, when you say conventional, what do you mean?
Like the way we watch movies today.
See,
You sit there in a seat and watch it happen.
okay, but like just on the holodeck,
It's on rails.
You're not saying like on a screen.
Or, I mean, however they do. I mean, maybe there will be 3D elements where it kind of surrounds you or something like that. But to me, even 3D, it had its chance. It kind of went away.
Right.
It's not something that we need to enjoy. It almost detracts from it if it's a good movie. A flat screen is all you need.
Yeah, but I feel like, well, now we're just talking about personal preference from 500 years in the future. Like,
well, if we were to extrapolate, I mean, humans 500 years ago weren't these different organisms. They're the same people in different circumstances.
right.
So I would like to believe if you brought somebody a movie, an iPad, who was 500 years ago, that they would just sit there and watch it. It wouldn't be this weird thing to them. After they tried to...
Right. Once they got over the
exercise
weird
the
part of it,
demons.
yeah, then
Yeah.
they would be fine with it. I feel like the holodeck is kind of a perfect blend of live theater and TV because you can watch it as if it's live theater, but you can do whatever you want and it's not going to interrupt. So like again, being a holodeck program, you probably have a replicator right there, so you can just replicate popcorn. But if I want to like get up and do something, I'm not going to, the holodeck can be set up as if I'm not there.
Right.
And so I feel like I agree that, yes, there would still be people who just want to sit and watch, but I feel like having the not 3D option where you have to put something on, but literally 3-dimensional where you are immersed into the environment. I feel like once you have that option, you wouldn't go back.
I tend to agree with you, except for the part where a lot of
You're talking.
filmmaking... except for that I wasn't talking. I feel like a lot of cinema and television now especially is a curated visual experience. It's not just setting the camera up on a tripod and filming actors. That there is what you're seeing is purposeful, and how you see it is purposeful. And honestly, part of the art of making filmmaking, of making films and movies now, like TV, like 20 years ago, not so much the case, but now a lot of TV is just very long movies. And so it is very much about we're controlling what you're seeing, how you're seeing it. And a lot of the filmmaker's voice is expressed through the visuals. So you would lose that if you were just kind of in a room that was a real room and you were just kind of watching two cops talk to each other, or whatever it happens to be.
Well, yeah.
It would just be different.
Right. That's true. That is a fair point. Yeah. So Disneyland rides, the Omnimover versus like the fairy tale adventure rides where you're just pushed through it. In the fairy tale rides like Snow White, Pinocchio, all that kind of thing, they had to put in images everywhere because the rider was able to look everywhere. And then with the Haunted Mansion and the Omnimover, they invented a way where they could control where the rider was looking. So it allowed them to manipulate the story better than in those fairy tale rides. And that's a roundabout way of me saying that is an excellent point, because the director chooses what perspective the audience sees. Whereas if you're just immersed in it, right, you're just watching two cops talk, like you said.
Yeah. And so in this case, with this episode, the fact that they're playing a movie and they even show the script, like someone wrote out the script, which doesn't make sense, because that would mean that you yourself would have to follow the script. Otherwise, if you would say something, you want to take it in a different direction and they stay on the rails of the script, it wouldn't make any sense. It would derail quite quickly.
Well, yeah, and I would guess, kind of like what happened with the first season episode, where he put in all of their personal logs to create that the most realistic characters possible. It's kind of along the same lines. Like the script is the through line that the computer's trying to do. And you can veer off course drastically, but it's always going to try to it's going to correct itself.
Right. Yeah, I guess that would be what it's the idea of somebody writing a script doesn't make sense. It seems like you would write the story and the computer would extrapolate from the story according to those bios that the computer assembled, what that person would say. And it was more AI kind of written as opposed to you sitting down and typing something out.
Well, yeah, because then it's basically a play where you are like rehearsing your lines so you know what you have to say when they respond to you.
And nobody likes plays. How did we get onto that?
Holodeck movies, forced perspective.
Oh, Star Trek. Right, this is a Star Trek podcast. I had forgotten.
Okay, so anyway, proper Star Trek? I say yes.
I knew you were going to say that. And I had the same impulse. But I don't think it is.
Okay, why not?
Because as much as I like the time-origami, whatever that...
the chronogami.
The chronomagami. Chronomagami.
Okay.
Is that what you're talking about for the science fiction? The chronomagami?
No.
Oh, okay. So what do you think the science fiction is?
The holodeck itself. I feel like a fistful of datas is going to be the same thing, because the whole thing takes place in a holodeck, which we don't have. That's not a thing that we can do.
Yeah, but the holodeck is in like every other Star Trek Next Generation.
Right. But that's like...
It's not new.
I guess that's true. But we haven't seen it presented in this way. The way it was presented in this episode was unique. Like, we haven't seen a scenario where they're actually doing a movie that goes this far off the rails.
That's true. That's pretty novel. You're right. And you think that the moral or ethical dilemma is Boimler coming to terms with his
existential crisis, yes.
Yeah, I'll buy that.
Okay.
I felt like the Tindy stuff was...
Yeah, I did want to complain about that.
It's just dressing. Like, it didn't really mean... It didn't... Like, I actually couldn't quite follow it. I don't think it was followable. I think it was just supposed to be...
Well, she was doing the actual movie.
Right.
But what was interesting about it was, what bothers me is she seems to be either more ambitious or more greedy than we've seen so far. Like, she wanted to be a senior officer, and now we're finding out that she wants to go all the way up to captain. And that's a realization for her. That's not something that has been on her mind constantly. So it just seems like a strange... It's interesting that all of the Starfleet promotion ambition is coming from one character rather than giving them all, little bits.
It does seem to be escalating for her.
Yeah.
She seems to be getting more like, she's not just this optimist that she was previously. She seems to have a little bit more depth to her.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm curious again to see if that's going to play out this season, or if they do have a longer story for her, because who knows how many seasons it's going to be.
Yeah, that's true. It seems like the Rutherford mystery will take the front seat.
This season, I think so. Yeah.
It's funny. We say all the time, this is going to take the back seat to something else, but we don't say it's going to take the front seat.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we say we're going to put a spotlight on it, or it's going to be highlighted.
Right. We're going to put a spotlight on it, or it's going to take a back seat.
Right.
Makes no sense.
I think things go into the driver's seat.
Is there a driver's seat, though, or is it just, are you driving? He's driving the bus, where there are many seats, many levels of seats.
Many back seats where things can go.
Are they all back seats?
Well,
is it just the driver or the back seat in a bus?
Yeah. You're closer to the
first
front,
row,
but
there's second row, third row, fourth row.
Well, right, but they're all back seats. Like you're either driving or you're in a back seat.
Oh, so you're always in the back the second you cross the driver threshold. Yeah. Okay. Glad we settled something on this podcast.
Right? Yeah. That's been locked up, finalized. We're good to go.
Okay, so it's a genuine Star Trek episode. It's been so deemed.
Yeah, and definitely enjoyable.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah.
I really liked the whole J.J. Abrams, the original series Trek by way of J.J. Abrams.
Right.
I thought it was cool.
Yeah. Well, and I love how overkill it is. Like the lens flares everywhere.
Well, that's not an exaggeration. Like all the J.J. Abrams ones are that way, even when they're just talking in a room.
Right.
Not even when they're on the bridge.
Yeah.
It's like, where's this light coming from? I would say there's even more. It's probably way more expensive to produce Lower Decks this way, which is why it will go back to normal next week.
Right.
But it's too bad. I really like it. I feel like they should do it every episode. Not because I'm an action hack, but it just looks cool.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Action hack. It's another podcast, right? I don't know what it would be about, but it's a good podcast name.
I would guess that it would be dissecting action scenes.
Yeah. Which sounds so boring to me, especially after what I just told you about me liking the front parts of movies, not the back parts of movies.
Right. Yeah.
I like the front seats of movies, not the back seats. Okay. So we're agreed.
Yeah.
Star Trek episode.
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. What are we watching next week, Jonathan?
We are watching season 3, episode 9. Oh, and there is a 4th season coming. It was ordered in January of this year, so that's good to know.
Oh,
got that
you're so excited. You sound so excited.
Sorry, no, I am excited. I do enjoy the show. I am having a good time with it. I need to.
Yeah, right.
I need to cleanse.
You just said.
I need to cleanse my palate of Lower Decks and watch.
It's disgusting.
Something of like that's either live action or maybe I'll do an animated series.
Well, just go watch fucking DS9, throw some darts around, or have a baseball game.
Right.
You'll be back in no time.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Well, I've been Jonathan.
And I've been Paul.
And this has been The Measure of an Episode.
You're so much better at this than I am.
But I love hearing you do it.
I was going to do one of the triplets, the bad guy triplets in the movie, who were, and that was another reference, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot to tell you. That was from, I don't know which one. I think it's Undiscovered Country.
The Dura sisters?
Where it's the sort of busty Klingons.
Mm-hmm.
That was obviously a reference to that.
Yes.
Right?
Do you know what their names were?
No.
Left, right, and center.
Oh, in this episode.
Yeah.
I love that.
I know.
Left, right, and center. Is that what they were in the credits?
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
It's because you laughed as you said it.
Okay, I'm stalling. I need to think of somebody to do. Give me somebody to do. I'm not good at this. I can't do this.
Just do Boimler. We haven't done Boimler yet.
You know, the guy who plays Boimler is in The Boys. He's like one of the main characters in The Boys, and I cannot put them together. Like I know which person he is, and I just the person in The Boys and the person on the show, I cannot.
Right, they're so different.
They're so different. Yeah. But you already knew that. Spot on, right?
Spot on.